Welcome to Running the Table, the podcast where we run through everything on the table in the world of sports. And we're going to try something new. This episode is going to be a lot longer than the ones in the past.
Long form content.
And
Let's
it's actually
go.
going to be like podcast style. So we're going to try to get it out on various podcast platforms, Spotify, Google Music, Apple Podcast, like all the fun stuff. And of course, we're going to keep bringing you the content on YouTube. And for this first
Trying something
preliminary
new.
episode, we're trying something new. We're going to talk about the NBA Finals because the Denver Nuggets just defeated the Miami Heat in 5 games. And we're also going to take a look at, a few other stuff around the NBA and the world of sports in general. So, Tim, are you ready to go?
Let's run it. I'm excited because this is something that I've kind of wanted to look into for a while now. Just looking more at sort of the open face. Let's just run through stuff as we see it.
Let's just talk about stuff. And the first stuff that we're going to talk about is the Denver Nuggets capturing their first NBA title. Ooh. In 47 years of existence, they finally got to the mountaintop. Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray, and company, they took care of business in 5 games, like Soup predicted. Another Tim Jin prediction. So celebratory
Nuggies
metal
5,
pipe
baby.
noise for that. Big clang, big metal pipe, because I don't know if I'll actually add that in post. I may not. Who knows? Nikola Jokic won the NBA Finals MVP and the Bill Russell Trophy. He absolutely carried the Nuggets with,
oh my gosh,
averaging 30, 14, and 7 in the finals. The point totals 27, 41, 32, 23, and 28 with a pair of triple doubles, 10 total triple doubles throughout the playoffs. And if it wasn't impressive enough, he is the first player in NBA history to lead the postseason in points, rebounds, and assists. Yeah. And the awesome thing about Nikola Jokic is he doesn't care. Not one bit.
Not
he
at all.
Care.
His comment after they were talking to a post game, he's like, "We can go home now." He just wants to go home to his horses, man.
The job is finished. We can go home. He
loves playing basketball.
Well, he can't go home
wants
yet.
to go home.
He can't go home yet. Yes. The parade's on Thursday, so he needs to wait until Friday.
Well, he was asking about the parade. He was like, "When is it?" He was like, "No, I gotta go home.
I gotta go home, please."
He's like, "Man, I'm tired of this shit." He's tired of taking out all of these guys.
Oh my goodness. And you could tell how much at least the team aspect meant to him, because in the post-game interview, he said, we're not in it for ourselves. We're in it for the guy next to us. Yeah. And that's why this means even more. And you can see on the emotion of the Nuggets how much it meant to him, especially Jamal Murray, who shed a few tears.
I love that dude. Oh, honestly, I was never like a fan of him. I was never like too much of a fan of him, like coming into the league, or even, I mean, at least since he's been in the NBA, I found him to be a very likable guy. And especially his comeback post ACL and just the way that he's handled himself. And you talk about the emotion he showed. I mean, just truly a classy guy.
I completely agree. The story from the ACL tear afterwards, I mean, he was upset. He asked, "Are you going to trade me?" And they said, "No, we love you here."
They stuck with him.
You're our guy. They stuck with him, and then he blossomed into being a true co-star and star in this league, and he was really a team leader. And without Jamal Murray, do the Nuggets win the NBA Finals? I'm not sure. I mean, I'm also not much for speculation, but Jamal Murray's contribution cannot be understated. I mean, he also had a triple-double, that 34, 10, and 10 performance in Game 3. Yeah. The second leading scorer on the Nuggets, 21 points per game. And he averaged a double-double, averaged 10 assists per game, right on the nose. So, but it's not just about the stars, it's about the depth that showed up for the Nuggets. And I think that's what
that really made all the difference.
Absolutely, because you have guys like Aaron Gordon, Bruce Brown, Christian Braun stepping up in various games in the big moments. Like, who knew Aaron Gordon had 27 in him in Game 4? Like, that performance was absolutely crazy in and of itself.
I mean, I think what's crazy for Aaron Gordon, though, is if you take a look at who Aaron Gordon was as a player before he got to the Nuggets, he was pretty much more of like a number 1 or number 2 option when he was with the Magic, because the Magic didn't have a lot going on.
It was the Magic
when he came to the Nuggets, I mean, yeah, but when he came to the Nuggets, all of a sudden you're inserted behind two offensive scoring powerhouses with Jokic and Murray. So he's even said it himself, where it's like you make your way doing the everything else. He turned himself into an everything else player. Now he still has had that scoring ability, but one of the things that he did very well over the course of these last couple of seasons is he's worked on his outside game, and that's what was working for him on that 27-point night. Is he was getting the three ball to drop, because he's had the size mismatch against a lot of these smaller Heat guards and forwards throughout this series. But when he started getting the three ball going, oh gosh, how do you defend him then? Because they didn't have anybody to stop him in the post. So you give him some space and hope you can, at least keep him in front of you. But if he's just going to stop and shoot a three, yeah, he was really impressive. The hustle that he showed both in the offensive and defensive end, he made a huge difference. I loved the energy from Christian Braun that he brought to the series.
That guy's such a spark
He was
plug.
fantastic. Absolutely. He was electric on the defensive end in the minutes he got. I think that they could have used more minutes out of him in some of these games, because they kind of pick and chose which games to go with him more or less. But we talked about, everybody talked about, looking at the series, the depth of these two teams. What it came down to is game in and game out, the Nuggets' depth just rose above the Heat depth. There was too many games in the series where the Heat could not get solid performances out of multiple of their essentially key role guys, whether it be Gabe Vincent, Max Strus, Caleb Martin. They either had one of them playing well or kind of none of them, because you had a pretty consistent scoring out of Jimmy and out of Bam. But everybody else, he was all over the place. I mean, Kyle Lowry had his games. You had a game here and there of Kevin Love nailing a couple of shots. Caleb Martin, I really wish that he never got sick, because I wonder whether or not he would have continued to have a larger role in this series. Because after he came back, I don't think he came back to the starting lineup again.
He did,
because they kept with the big lineup with Kevin Love trying to defend the Nuggets a bit better. But I don't want to say that took Caleb Martin out of his element, but we did not see the same type of Caleb Martin in terms of scoring the ball once he exited the starting lineup.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty interesting segue into the Heat in general, going back to the lack of depth. And that was kind of their thing. That was their shtick of, Jimmy didn't need to be a guy that carried the Nuggets, or not the Nuggets, the Heat rather, throughout. Yeah. Bam Adebayo showed up really big and was actually the leading scorer on the Heat.
We were so unbelievably wrong about Bam Adebayo in the series. I would just like to stop and admire that for a second, because we thought that he was going to struggle worse.
That was going to be well, you thought about the offensive aspect of him struggling. I was more so talking about him struggling on defense and how he's going to guard Nikola Jokic, which of course Nikola Jokic still got his, but Bam Adebayo came to play on offense. Surprising. Yeah, no.
He was aggressive on offense. He was aggressive. He showed so much aggression in the series. He showed so much aggression in the series that we hadn't seen out of him throughout this postseason. Why doesn't he do that
more often in the regular games? And
I think it's a sense of urgency.
I guess so. When your back's against the wall, what are you going to do? Fight or flight? And some people turn and run, and some people, dig in and go even harder. And Bam was a guy that really, really dug in there. And
I think there's also,
I think for the Heat, what was interesting for me was the different lineups that they used.
They put Kyle a lot Lowry of weird stuff out on the floor.
Didn't start, but got major minutes, like 33, 34 minutes off the bench, which I thought was really weird, because I understand your young guys like a Max Strus, especially Max Strus, like Gabe Vincent, Caleb Martin, they were struggling, but to go with older vets, I understand the Kevin Love thing, but then you only play like 14 to 15 minutes. It was a strategy that didn't really work. I don't know. The Heat just, I don't want to say ran out of gas, but when they needed it to click the most, it just didn't. That bread and butter that clicked during the Milwaukee series and the first 3 games of the Boston series just wasn't there. Although, Tim, shout out Udonis Haslem. 1 game, 0 minutes.
Yeah.
one shot attempt in the entire finals.
Hey, I mean,
Isn't
you
that
gotta
wild
look.
though that Udonis
Yeah,
Haslem has been a part of every single Miami Heat finals appearance?
that's wild. I mean, dude's been
Every
around for
single
a long
Heat.
time. 20 seasons, right?
Yeah, it's
20
some
seasons,
42 year
seven
old Udonis
finals,
Haslem.
seven
Oh my
finals
god.
appearances.
Oh my
You
goodness.
talk about that Heat culture. That was Udonis Haslem right there.
Udonis Haslem is Heat culture, but for the Miami Heat, let's just talk about them for a minute. There's absolutely no consolation prizes, but they didn't play like an 8 seed, which was so admirable
No,
to me.
they were tough.
They were tough. I mean, they were a game away from getting knocked out in the play-in, and yet you go on this run where you defeat Milwaukee, New York, and Boston, and suddenly you're the first 8 seed to make the NBA Finals in a full season. People like to
Yes.
talk about the 99 Knicks. That
Yeah,
was
a
in a
little
shortened
asterisk
season.
behind the Knicks. Yeah.
Yeah, and what was impressive about them was the Heat showed really, really tough grit and tenacity throughout the entire series. Like they were major underdogs coming in anyways. Nobody's really shocked that the Nuggets won in 5. In fact, Tim, you called it once again. But the Miami Heat played like they belonged, even though
Oh yeah.
it didn't click at the right time, but they didn't just roll over and die. And I think that's just a testament to what the Miami Heat were made of and the character of that system and that culture.
Yeah, and once again, I tip my cap to Eric Spoelstra. I still think
Absolutely. You
he's an
have to.
incredible coach. What he did with his team, I think he really, for the large majority of this postseason, you could say what you want about the struggles they had in the finals, but I think for the large majority of this postseason, he got the best out of pretty much all of his guys. And he did a fantastic job with this team. They had a lot of guys that were counted out from day one. That was essentially kind of the storyline behind this Heat team. But you're right. I mean, they were counted out in basically every playoff series that they played this postseason. And like we said, I mean, there wasn't a lot of expectations for them against the Nuggets. So for them to not pull out, the one last magic trick
One
out of a
last
hat,
hurrah. I mean,
yeah,
for the
I'm
Nuggets
not going to
to be
hold that
like
against
minus
them.
400 in the books to win the series, like, oh my God, the
Yeah,
greatest upset. No, like this was expected to happen. So,
yeah,
Tim,
but
I want to change gears and do something a little impromptu with Nikola
hit me
Jokic's
with it.
impressive playoff run and
Oh my
all and
gosh.
everything that he has done.
You talking about the player comparisons?
Not quite, not quite. Although
I did see something on
the
that, and it
comparison
is incredible the numbers he put up this
oh
postseason
yeah.
compared to a lot of these guys' finals MVP runs.
But where would you rank Nikola Jokic all time in NBA history? Because think about it now, right?
Oh,
Back
currently?
currently back to
Oh, that's so tough.
back MVPs, NBA champion, NBA Finals MVP, which of course to Nikola, this NBA Finals MVP
He's
is a
like,
lot sweeter than yeah, than the third consecutive
yeah,
MVP that he so rightfully deserved. I understand it's a regular season award, but looking back in hindsight, Nikola
yeah,
Jokic should have won that third consecutive
yeah. Oh
MVP.
boy.
Where would you rank him all time?
I hate that because
Yeah,
it's
and
so
that's
hard to put a
exactly
guy in
why
a
I asked
ranking
it because
when
it's
he's
not an
still
easy
playing.
question.
Because how do you rank somebody when you don't know how many essentially years of his prime he has left? We could just be still seeing, the glimpse of what Nikola Jokic
Well,
can
that's why I
become.
ask currently right now. Of course, these are
Uh
always fluctuating as time goes
yeah.
on, but
I would say
would
based on what I've seen out of him now, you talk about two, arguably three back-to-back-to-back MVP type seasons, and then the postseason run that he had, not only to win the finals and finals MVP, but to do it in such a convincing fashion from start to finish. I think I kind of instinctively have to already put him top 25 to top
top
20.
20. Whoa. I
I
think
don't think
that's a
he
little bit light. I
you
think
think
you
he
can
you think he belongs higher?
I think you can elevate him a little bit higher. I think you can
I
elevate
know.
him
It I
towards like
hesitate to
15.
overshoot. yeah, I hesitate to overshoot.
It's okay. It's tough
So
not to
it's
be a
like,
prisoner of the moment, but
yeah,
I mean, if you want to run through, he's not in the LeBron, Magic,
no,
Kareem,
I
Shaquille
can't
O'Neal.
possibly think of putting him in the top 10 right now.
You're not gonna put him there yet. But like, okay, think about it this way: a guy like Tim Duncan,
Yeah.
I think that's pretty comparable as to like right now in terms of greatness. And I understand Tim Duncan's body of work is a lot better, is a lot
Yeah.
bigger,
Once again, the problem is
but
it all comes down to
Tim
how
Duncan
people value
did
championships, which we've talked about on multiple times,
right
essentially
on
over the
or
course of
off the
things. But
podcast.
yeah,
I don't value championships. I
yeah,
will say it right here, right now. Championships is a team accolade, and I think it's ridiculous to put a team accolade on
yeah. On a
on an
personal resume.
individual
Yeah.
moniker, which is the greatest basketball player of all time. You're not talking about the greatest team of all time. So championships, when people are like, oh, Michael Jordan has 6 rings, LeBron James lost the NBA final, he'll never catch up.
I've opened up the
Doesn't
rabbit
matter.
hole.
Doesn't matter. I simply put, I don't care. I don't
Yeah.
really care.
No, and that's perfectly fair. I understand your logic behind it
And that's consistent.
entirely.
That's not just in the NBA, that's in the NFL too.
Yeah.
And like, well, those are the two sports where like the GOAT debate is. I would say Major League Baseball, but it's really hard to have a GOAT of Major League Baseball.
Yeah. Especially
But
with how much, I mean, you talk about how the game has changed across, you talk about NBA, NFL,
yeah,
but
yeah.
MLB, oh my gosh, you
But
talk about great players across
back on track.
generations.
Back on track. Nikola Jokic,
Yeah.
right? Top 15 of all time.
I think if I were to sit down and legitimately try to craft out a list, which would take a while because you
It
have
would take
to
a while.
consider everybody, I
Yes, you
think
do.
he would he would quite possibly
I
fall
think
within
it'll
my
be
15 to
close.
20.
I think
15
it'll
to
be
20
close.
probably. For me personally, maybe he would fall closer to 20 just because of the fact that I know I don't want to discredit his regular season dominance, but this is the first time that we've seen this type of performance from him in the postseason. And I think that has something to do with greatness. You may not talk about winning the championship, but the
No.
type of dominance and postseason performances, we've seen the Nuggets bow out too early in the playoffs, essentially far below their expectations for a couple of seasons. You talk about with the MVP seasons that Jokic has had.
Well,
So it's like,
I think you talk about a guy like Shaquille O'Neal, where
yeah,
Shaq has to be, for me, number 4 of all time,
all
just
time.
because of the dominant, right? LeBron, Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Shaq. And that's it with Kareem at 5. And that is, I think that's perfectly fair given that Shaquille O'Neal is the most dominant player in NBA history, and I don't really think you can make an argument for anybody.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I don't know if you can really make an argument for Braun or Jordan because they didn't really dominate the game the
Oh, in terms of
way
dominance, I mean, I will
Shaq did.
say entirely different era. The only other two guys you could consider in the
So,
act
but
of dominance would be Wilt and Bill Russell.
not maybe not Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, but Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is
I'm saying in
is
terms
right
of
under there.
dominance, though,
Right,
like
in
you
terms of
talk about
dominance.
those guys in terms of dominating their
But
era, they dominated.
where was I going with this?
Yes,
The dominance of Nikola Jokic, that definitely holds him in a higher regard,
absolutely, yeah.
in my opinion. So
Well, yeah, and putting this postseason run into perspective, I do kind of want to twist back to what I had mentioned there for a second of his numbers this postseason compared to some of those all-time greats. And hopefully I'm quoting this correctly. I'm pretty sure he scored more points per game in this postseason than Kevin Durant when Kevin Durant won his Finals MVP with or one of
you would be
the
correct.
Finals MVPs of
I
the
know which Finals
Warriors.
MVP you're talking about because he averaged, I think, 28.5, and Jokic was up
Yes,
north of 30.
30. Yes. And then he averaged more or right around the assists per game as Magic Johnson in his
Oh, he
first
averaged more
Finals
than Magic.
MVP. Yes, in his first Finals MVP, his rookie year, when obviously Magic Johnson took that postseason by storm, he had more rebounds per game by a significant margin. I think it was by a whole 2 rebounds per game or something than Tim Duncan when Tim Duncan
something like that
won his Finals MVP.
Well, this
Like,
is why we
you're
talk about
talking
individual
legends on
greatness.
legends on legends, and he outperformed each of them in their iconic category. You think of like Kevin Durant as a scorer, one of the best scorers
if you
of all
want to
time.
combine the scoring of KD, the rebounding of Tim Duncan, and the passing of Magic Johnson,
You're
and then you
talking a 2K my
combine them,
player.
and then
You're
you
talking a
combine them,
2K my player.
which is
Like,
why is Nikola Jokic in the top 15 of all time right now really that far-fetched?
no,
I don't
it's
know.
not that far-fetched, but it's the right now that bothers me. Because to me, finishing your career and how you finish your career has
Sure,
something
Tim,
to
let me
do
just
with
get
that.
my crystal ball and look into Nikola Jokic's future and already put him in the top 5 of all time because I know he's going to go out and do this again. No, you
I
can't do
know.
that. Oh, you know damn well all we have is right now.
I
So,
know. But that's why is like I think what he has done is absolutely deserving of being in that conversation. Um but you know what? The big thing for me is I would love to see what he can do in essentially going forward. We've
he's
seen
only 28
essentially
years old.
three straight seasons of pretty much total domination outside of those 2 playoff runs where they fell short. Where does he go from here? Do they keep that same fire? They sure seem like they want to. He sure seems like he wants to. Michael Malone talked about, the next thing past winning a championship is being a dynasty. So for them, that's the next
Oh
goal. The
boy.
question is what can Jokic become after this?
That's
Could we
such an
see a
odd
4th
thought to
MVP
me.
type season in a row?
That's such. Oh, I would. Well, first of all, I would almost guarantee it, and I'm going to book it right now. Nikola Jokic wins his 3rd MVP next year, a year in advance. I'm going to book that. Second of all, oh geez, a Nuggets dynasty. The Denver Nuggets dynasty
When you think
just
about
has such an odd ring to it, but like it's
exactly,
not.
because
It's
we
absolutely
haven't
feasible.
seen that type of
Is
dominance or high
absolutely
level
feasible.
teams from the Nuggets in the past. You talk about 47 seasons. This is their first championship. Like, I
But the
don't want to
Denver
call it
Nuggets,
bold. I don't want to call it bold to go from getting your first championship ever to thinking about dynasty. But what mindset
but this is
could you possibly have
so.
other than this?
This is very doable. Like
Oh yeah,
they can very much do it again because Jokic,
they've
Murray,
got the core. They've got the
Porter,
guys at the right
Gordon,
age.
they're all young. They're all mid
The big
20s.
thing, what it comes down to, which we've seen so many teams struggle with, is keeping your core together. Obviously, with these guys being young, something that we see that now they may not have gotten the championship, but they still have the same issues. What becomes of the Boston Celtics when you have 2 guys that are essentially deserving of supermax contracts? How do you keep your core together? How do you keep those guys together? And that's going to be
Isn't
the
that
interesting thing going
the million
forward
dollar question?
when you've got guys performing like Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic, you clearly have to pay them as such. But then you've got guys emerging like Michael Porter Jr., Bruce Brown, Christian Brown. Like, you've got these
Yeah,
guys that
that
are going to need to
I'll buy
get their
Braun.
bag as well.
I'll buy
Like,
Braun to get the bag. I think they could use Michael Porter's duds against him in the finals because
you
I don't
could,
know.
but if
Teams
you
tend
look
to
at the
do
rest
that,
of his season,
but yeah, no, I would
he
argue
shot
that
the
Michael
ball really
Porter.
well throughout the season. He struggled in the playoffs. He struggled in the finals specifically, but he did shoot the ball really, really
Are we
well.
talking
Man,
about? Are we talking about Michael Screw
MPJ
my teammate
loves
grade
to
Porter?
shoot. I was just about to say, oh my God, does that
Screw
guy
my
like
teammate
to
grade.
shoot?
Yeah,
I
what's an
have never
assist?
seen I have never seen a guy in the NBA that
I
is
was
not
gonna
considered
say
to be a superstar be more one-on-one heavy than Michael Porter Jr.
I really
Whenever
wish I
he
had
gets the
interrupted
ball,
you there because Michael Porter Jr. acts like those old heads at the Y. I have
oh
about
yeah,
6 inches of space. Screw it.
yeah. Doesn't matter, contested or not, step back 1 foot, 2 feet, fading away, jumping forward through it, through contact, over contact. It does not matter. That man will shoot the ball.
Yeah,
And
it's
and to
it's
be fair,
something, man.
I get his confidence. he had been playing very, very well. And we saw a glimpse in game 5 of some
Shoot
of the
the
type
rock,
of
young man.
confidence and
Shoot the
shooting.
rock. Sling that thing.
that dude slings it, honestly, probably more than he should. But I do understand.
You don't
he
say.
he had been playing very solid basketball, and he was a key, essentially number 3 scorer on that team for a lot of the season. But I think it does take a little bit of introspection when the shots aren't falling to not try to just shoot yourself out of a slump, because that really felt like what he was doing for the entirety of the finals. Because I want to say, I don't know his stats off the top of my head, he probably shot like 20% from 3 in the finals. It was not pretty. He shot like 40% in the regular season.
Boy.
He was a really good shooter in the regular season, but he struggled in these finals.
Tim, Dion Waiters would not approve of your mentality, because I would much rather go 0 for 30 than 0 for 9, because going 0 for 9 means I stopped shooting the ball. And quite frankly, shooters shoot. I don't think we need to get that psychological into the psyche of Michael Porter Jr. Oh no, what do you do when you miss? I think that's a conversation for a completely different day. Regardless, congratulations to the Denver Nuggets. Will we see a burgeoning dynasty? I have no idea. That is TBD, but the future in the NBA is looking a mile high, and I can't wait to see what happens next. But
keep them healthy. That's the big thing.
Keep them healthy. But turning the page to next season, there will be some new faces coaching on the sidelines. A lot of different turnaround, as we're going to talk about the NBA coaching carousel. So let's talk about some of the different faces that we'll be seeing on the sidelines, starting in Philadelphia with the 76ers. Doc Rivers is out. Nick Nurse is in. Doc Rivers was fired after the third consecutive second-round exit of the 76ers and replaced by former Raptors coach Nick Nurse, who was an NBA champion in 2019 and a coach of the year in 2020. That was an interesting
Can I just
firing.
say that I hate all of this?
I
hate all of these firings of so many of these successful coaches just because they fall short of the mark. Like, I get that some of them have fallen short of the mark a little bit more than others. And I would say specifically for this one in Philadelphia, there may be a little bit more going on behind the scenes than maybe essentially of, like, you know, guys and their relationships with the coach and so on and so forth. There's been some talk about that, but so many of these, what you fired versus what you hired, so many of them do not feel like an improvement.
No,
so
absolutely.
If you didn't succeed with this other guy, why do you think that you're going to succeed?
Complacency.
Complacency. It's nothing against guys like Nick Nurse. Like, I know that Nick Nurse has won an NBA Finals, but I'll be honest, I don't really think they won the finals because of Nick Nurse.
That's
an interesting. Think they won because
that is an interesting take. I just find it absurd. Like with Doc Rivers, he's such a tenured coach, and he's been able to do so many great things.
He's been able to turn around a lot of teams that have not been great.
Like the Orlando Magic, where he won Coach of the Year, the Celtics, the Clippers, and even these Sixers. And like you said, there could be a little bit more behind the scenes.
There were some talks about like his relationship with Harden and whether or not it was like, oh, keep Harden or keep Doc Rivers.
Oh my God!
I don't really know if any of that's true.
Be big boys, get along. But I mean, the Sixers aren't the only contender that shoved their old coach out the door. With the Bucks, after they lost to the Heat, Mike Budenholzer was shown
my
the
mind.
boot. And he
won a chip with them.
Yeah, he won the first NBA Finals with the Bucks in
you're just like, bye-bye.
50 years, and then 2 years later you're gone.
And especially looking at what the Heat ended up doing in this postseason, that seems like such an overreaction.
I see. Yeah, the Budenholzer firing seems a little bit preemptive, in my opinion. It's not even that. It's that you brought in Adrian Griffin, who's been a long-time assistant coach.
It's what makes that organization feel that they are in better hands under Adrian Griffin than they were under Mike Budenholzer. That's what doesn't make any sense to me.
Right, we can do the same thing with the Phoenix Suns, where they fired Monty Williams and brought in Frank Vogel.
Oh God, that one makes me so upset. Frank Vogel, why?
Oh boy, oh Frank Vogel.
He couldn't win with LeBron.
with LeBron and AD. Well, he did win. Well, he won in the bubble with Bron.
I mean, yes, but is more of the after that, whereas like everything
I'm
kind of
sorry.
just
Did LeBron James win a ring without Frank Vogel? No. Did he win a ring with Frank Vogel with the Lakers?
I'm
Yes, he
pretty
did.
sure LeBron has won a ring
With the
without Frank
Lakers.
Vogel.
On the Lakers, has he won a ring without Frank Vogel?
No.
No, he
Has
hasn't,
Frank
Tim.
Vogel won a ring without LeBron? What has Frank Vogel done at all without LeBron?
I mean, hey, Frank
I mean,
Vogel.
he
Frank
had
Vogel was
what?
the former coach of my Pacers,
I
so
was gonna say, did he have the PG-13 Pacers?
yeah,
Right?
he did. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had the
That's
PG.
essentially, I would say, where he got his first prominence
That
from.
wasn't okay. The PG-13 Pacers, that wasn't Vogel's fault. So that
I
title
feel like
window,
the Pacers find a way to shoot themselves in the foot.
they
And
totally shot themselves in the foot.
that's not
They
even
totally
like a
shot themselves in the
coaching
foot
thing. It's just
because
like being on the team. They find a
what
way
the
to shoot themselves in the foot no matter
what the
what.
Pacers managed to do with that PG-13 like Danny Granger, Roy Hibbert team is
Danny Granger.
well
Oh
they
gosh, Roy Hibbert. I forgot about that guy.
and you know what? That team in the early 2010s was a title contender. So you shut
I
your
would
mouth.
agree because
They
Roy
trade.
Hibbert was a beast for a while.
Oh yeah. Well, no. What happened was they simply traded the wrong glue guys, and it
Yeah,
was a mess.
it
But
all fell apart.
what are the Suns gonna do? Because you
I
tender
don't
Chris
know.
Paul, so you're left with Booker, KD, and Aiton, and
What are they going to start campaign now? Is campaign
uh
going to be their starting point guard?
man, that's really painful.
I mean, oh. I mean, we've seen some really good performances out of campaign, but it's fire and ice. I mean, you've seen
A song of
30-point
fire and
games
ice.
and welcome to campaign's entire career. Campaign's campaign. I hate that I said that.
We're both coming out with the puns late in this episode.
Ugh.
Other teams that switched out coaches. Toronto with Nick Nurse going to Philadelphia. They brought in Darko Rajakovic.
Beats me, man. I don't know.
Well, longtime assistant coach overseas for a while.
Yeah.
Houston brought in Ime Udoka after firing Steven Silas, and that's not a Steven Silas thing. It's just that the Rockets were bad, and Ime Udoka was available after coaching the Celtics to
Ime Udoka is
the
always
finals.
available. Tell that to his mistress.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. He is always available.
Oh geez, if only he had the women in San Antonio and not Houston, he'd have a great time there. Shout out Charles Barkley, baby.
Barkley.
Shout out Charles Barkley.
No, legitimately though, I am interested to see what comes of this Rockets team under Ime Udoka.
Always available, Tim. Shut up.
Shut up, but dude. Legitimately, I am curious because the Rockets are they're a very, very, very young team. Mm-hmm. They have quite a bit of young talent between guys like Jalen Green. You've got Jabari Smith. And there's at least another one that I'm forgetting there, as I would say a part of their young core. And if I'm not mistaken, they have another pretty high draft pick, don't they? Because they were terrible.
They do. They were bad, so they'll have an opportunity to draft like Brandon Miller, one of those type of guys.
Although I will say I'd be interested if they did, because they kind of already have the Brandon Miller archetype in like 2 or 3 different guys.
Look, I'm gonna be honest. When it comes to the NBA draft lottery, San Antonio is going to get Victor Wembanyama, and
whoever
Pacers,
ends up getting second will probably take
Scoot, and Indiana.
There's been some talks,
and they didn't get a high enough draft pick, so
they didn't tank hard enough.
Oh my god.
There has been some talks.
I mean, whatever.
One real quick. There has been some talks about potentially some trades surrounding the second overall pick and where Scoot might end up. But that remains to be seen. Maybe we'll cover some NBA draft stuff later. But
no, it's definitely something we'll get around to talking about in a later episode.
This coaching stuff drives me insane. Like I cannot stress this enough that I don't understand why. Because
it happens in the NFL too, where coaches
but look at this NBA Finals. Look at 2 coaches where you let them, in the most simplest terms, you let them cook.
True.
Let them build their teams. Let them build their
Let them Dalvin
programs.
Cook.
The Vikings didn't.
Well, Dalvin
But
Cook is bad now. But anyways, I understand what you're saying.
but
These
yeah,
guys had
let
time
these
to
guys
build a
build their
system,
programs, and
build
eventually,
a
if
culture,
like
and
you saw,
you'll find something.
if the Nuggets didn't trust in Michael Malone after these past couple of seasons and potentially fired him and have him essentially in the same book that all of these guys are, they would not have been in the NBA Finals this year and they would not have won it. I stand by that because his coaching and the consistency that brings in a program was huge for them.
One more blurb. What do you think about the Detroit Pistons hiring of Monty Williams? Because Dwayne Casey wasn't fired. He resigned, and he's still going to remain with the organization in a front office role. So, I mean, they lost him on the sidelines, but yet it was a coaching vacancy. I think this is an exception to all of those. And
yes, they didn't fire
and because Monty Williams was shown the door, now he gets to
and the
coach
Pistons signed him to a fat coaching contract.
Yes, they did.
That was pretty wild because obviously coaching contracts usually aren't that
they
big
really,
or aren't
really
that.
wanted Monty Williams.
And I understand it because I love the way that guy coaches a team in terms of the mentality that he brings. For some reason, I don't know what it is about him and watching him coach those Suns teams, but he has always felt like such a calming force on the sidelines. Like whenever things, you've got a lot of different personalities, a lot of different kinds of guys. He's a very sort of stoic, calm guy. And I think with the young core that I don't know why you're doing that,
Cool
but
waves,
that's
good
fine.
vibes, man. Like
Whatever
Monty
floats your
Williams, bro.
boat. But
Well,
I think
hey,
with
this boat on these waves would be floating.
I will sink that boat so fast. But
Cannonball.
with Monty Williams, like I think that he is the perfect kind of personality to mentor and guide a lot of these really young guys that the Pistons have that they're trying to build around. Because if I'm not mistaken, I believe Cade Cunningham was out for a lot of this year with a surgery. So he should be, I think, coming back. I think he was hurt for quite a bit. You've got guys that have shown a lot of promise in Jaden Ivey. And they've just got a lot of young guys that they haven't really been able to put everything together yet. But they should have another pretty decent draft pick. They should be able to add more talent, and they could potentially look towards building these guys into, once again, let them build. Especially with so many of these guys age, let Monty Williams work with these guys for 2-3 years, build them into a playoff team, and build their confidence and set of skills where these guys can potentially be a 4 or 5 person significant core to push your program and your organization for the next 5-10 years. But the problem is you have to let that build. They have a good foundation, but I think this is a big turning point, I think, or it can be a big turning point for the Detroit Pistons. And for me, obviously people don't know, but I'm actually in Detroit this summer. So I know I've been talking to quite a few people around here about Pistons basketball and Detroit sports in general. And yeah, it seems like there is some amount of hope for this team because of the fact that it seems like they're trending in the right direction. You're starting to get pieces. You've got a coach that clearly they really, really wanted for a reason. So they went out and got him. So it feels like the pieces are falling into place, but now it's where you go from here. So I think next year is going to be a really big and interesting year for them of what are they going to look like? Could we see them start pushing towards a potential playoff berth? I don't think they'll necessarily get there next year because I think it takes some time to build that foundation with Monty Williams at the
Ed
helm.
Helms.
Yes,
Ed Helms at the Williams.
Yeah.
How bad can he possibly be?
But yeah, I'm excited because I feel like to me, obviously, because big Purdue and Jaden Ivey fan, I would like to see the Detroit Pistons succeed. I like the guys that they have on that team, so I'd love to see them go somewhere in the next couple of years.
Well, we'll see what happens. A lot of new faces in the NBA and on the sidelines, and that'll do it for our first real long form, actual legit podcast style.
That's fun. I like this. I think it's cool.
I think this is something we're definitely going to do more often. It's a good vibe, good flow. We love it, and we're going to bring more. So if you want to watch our other stuff, if you're on YouTube, we have a ton of episodes on all things sports. So we have tons of content for you. And our next big project is going to be getting this out on the airwaves on all major podcast platforms, including Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and wherever else podcasts can be found. But until next time, that's it for us. We out.
Peace.